Planning Commission's July 18th meeting. If you'll call the roll, please.
Chairman LaTour.
Here.
Vice Chairman Stebbins.
Here.
Commissioner Berry.
Here.
Commissioner Brock.
Here.
Commissioner Bynum. Commissioner Hamilton. Commissioner Haynes.
Here.
Commissioner May. Commissioner Rahman.
Here.
Commissioner Thomas.
Here.
Commissioner Vogel.
Here.
Oh, there it is.
We do have a quorum and are able to conduct business.
Very good, thank you. You've been given a copy of the minutes. There'll be a motion to approve them.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of being presented. Oh, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
I'm
I
sorry.
just like to slap him. Go ahead.
I'm having my problems anyway.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the minutes of the last meeting. All in favor, raise your right hand. Those opposed? Thank you so much. Get started with the agenda.
The revised consent agenda for the subdivision agenda here for July 18th, 2019. On the consent withdrawal portion, item B, file Z-1002-B, the Cantrell Tunnel Wash revised short form PCD located at 7706 Cantrell Road. On June 24th, 2019, staff received a request to withdraw the application for a revised PCD as the developer was submitting for building permits under the approved PCD. Staff recommends approval of the request to withdraw the application. The consent deferrals, item A, file S-1312-B, lots 1R and 2R of the Barrow Plaza Addition preliminary plat at 9101 West Markham Street. The notice requirement for the July 18th meeting was not completed. Staff recommends deferral of this item to the August 1st, 2019 agenda. Item D, file number Z-3451-D, the Bennett Davis Group revised short form POD located at 1300 North Shackelford Road. The notice requirement for the July 18th meeting was not completed. Staff recommends deferral of this item to the August 1st, 2019 agenda. Item E, file number Z-9418, Sunset Terrace, long form PRD, located at 2800 Battery Street. The notice requirement for the July 18th meeting was not completed. Staff recommends deferral of this item to the August 1st, 2019 agenda. Item number 1, S-1851, Redgate Business Center preliminary plat, located south of Interstate 30 and east of Alexander Road. On July 2nd, 2019, a deferral of this item to the August 29th, 2019 meeting was requested. Staff recommends approval of this deferral request. The consent approval section, item 2, file number Z-9430, lot 6, Promenade Site Plan Review, located at 16120 St. Vincent Way. Staff recommends approval of the site plan subject to compliance with the comments and conditions outlined in paragraphs D, E, and F of the agenda staff report. Staff also recommends approval of the requested variances to allow the parking to back into the access easements and to permit signage on all facades. Item 3, file number Z-5675-F, Philander Smith College, new student housing, short form POD, located at 900 West Daisy L. Gatson Bates Drive. Staff recommends approval of this request, subject to compliance with the comments and conditions as outlined in paragraph D, E, and F of the staff report. And it would also be noted that there was an error that was made in the staff report that this is a 4-story building and not a 3-story building. Item number 4, file number Z-9120-B, Rebel Kettle revised short form PCD, located at 822 East 6th Street. Staff recommends approval of the amended proposal for the removal of any lettering on the rear side of the stage and only artwork with an option to include a relatively small Rebel Kettle logo. In addition, all comments and conditions set forth in paragraphs D, E, and F must be met. Item 5, file number Z-9429, Harris Short Form PCD, located at 8122/8124 Stagecoach Road. Staff recommends approval of the PCD, subject to compliance with the comments and conditions outlined in paragraphs D, E, and the staff analysis in the agenda staff report. Item number 6, file Z-9431, Copperwell Retreat, short form POD, located at 12418 Cantrell Road. Staff recommends approval of the requested revision to the POD, subject to compliance with the comments and conditions outlined in paragraphs D, E, and F, and the staff analysis in the agenda staff report. And item 7, LA-0073-A, West Highlands Edition, revised advanced grading variance, located at 11,000 Canis Road. Staff recommends approval of the advanced grading variance request, subject to compliance with the comments and conditions as outlined in paragraph D of the agenda staff report. In addition to paragraph D, the variance request is subject to compliance with the following conditions. A grading permit in accordance with section 29-86 subsections C and D will be required prior to any land clearing or grading activities at the site. This concludes the consent agenda.
Okay, you've heard the consent agenda. Is there a motion to approve?
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion for the approval of today's consent agenda, including all staff comments and conditions.
Is there a second? Second. Moved and seconded to approve the consent agenda. If you're in favor, raise your right hand. Those opposed? None. And we'll move to the regular agenda, item Z 7605. Do we do the 8 now? Well, before we hear this item, here we go again. Before we hear this item, at least for now, it is the practice of the Planning Commission that if there are 8 commissioners or fewer, the applicant has the right to defer. I can assure you we're going to look at that policy. But applicant?
Thank you, Chairman. On behalf of the applicant, we will not defer, and we would like to have the item heard today.
Very good, thank you. Okay. Mr. Carney?
Good afternoon. Item C, file number Z7605-D, lots 2 and 3, Chavot Office Park, short form PCD, located at 17705 Cantrell Road. A little background on how we got to where we are on this. In 2004, the property was originally zoned POD, allowed for development of a single L-shaped 33,600 square foot office building. Uses that were allowed in that building were those listed in the O3 zoning district, plus the allowable 10% ancillary uses that are listed in the O3 zoning district. That development, of course, did not occur. In 2005, the current POD was approved, which allowed for the development of the site with 7 lots. Containing a total of about 32,000 square feet, broken into smaller buildings ranging in size from 3,500 to 7,000 square feet. A year after that, there was a revision to the POD to allow the 2 northern lots closest to Cantrell Road to be combined into a single lot for a bank, which is now developed on that property. Where we are today, in the center of the property, there are 2 pad sites indicated as Lot 2R right there. There are 2 pad sites, each under the current approved POD are to be developed with a 4,000 square foot office building per pad. The application before you today is to revise the POD to allow for the combining of that into 1 lot with an 8,000 square foot building rather than 2 lots with 4,000 on each. The uses that are proposed for the building differ from the current approved POD, which allows general and professional office uses only. When this 7-lot plan was developed, the ancillary uses were not included. So it wasn't O3 plus the ancillary uses, it was just O3 uses. So now the proposal is to combine the 2 center lots into a single 8,000 square foot building. The use mix proposed for the building, 2,000 square feet of the building proposed for office space, 3,000 square foot of the building proposed for a physical therapy fitness clinic, and then 3,000 square feet of the building proposed for a restaurant space with no drive-in service, just a sit-down, eat-in restaurant space. Staff is supportive of the proposal to revise the planned development to establish within this PCD zoning for just this, what would be combined into 1 lot. Our thinking on it is, although it's not a single building, it is a single office development site approved for some 32,000 square feet of building space. If it were a single building, the 3,000 square foot office building would be allowed typically as a matter of right in an O3 office. In this case, it's multiple buildings, but the numbers are still the same. The office, current office development is approved for some 32,000 square feet. 3,000 of it is being proposed for what we're looking at as an ancillary use within that office development, which is the restaurant use. Hours of operation for the office space on this site are proposed as 7 to 7, 5 days a week. The therapy center, 5:30 a.m. to 8 p.m., 6 days a week. The restaurant with no drive-through and no outdoor dining is proposed as 7 a.m. to 10 p.m., 7 days a week. Other than the development of the lot with the building, no other changes are proposed to the development plan. The site was developed and final platted at one time. The parking was put in, the curb, the guttering, all of that was put in at the time it was final platted. Again, staff does recommend approval of this revision to the plan development.
Commissioners, any questions of Mr. Carney? Okay, as you know, each side gets 20 minutes to speak their mind. The applicant will go first. They have the applicant has the option of speaking now and waiting, splitting up your time, or hearing what the opponent's neighborhood has to say.
Thank you, Chairman. We will like to have a brief few moments at the beginning and reserve time at the end.
Very good. Thank you.
For the record, I'm Antoine Phillips, attorney at Wright, Lindsay, and Jennings, and it's my privilege to represent the developer on this project. I want to do some quick introductions of other people you will hear from today. I have with me Joe White, who's the engineer for the project. Hear from Ernie Peters about our research into the traffic impact, and then representative of the developer is Mr. Ron Harper. And I'm going to keep it short because I think you want to hear from the engineer more than you want to hear from me, the lawyer. But I will say a couple things. One, the applicant and the representatives of the applicant have met with the people most impacted by this development and have made a lot of, I think, improved this project by listening to those folks. And you'll hear some of those improvements when Joe gets up to speak. The second thing I want to mention, that every use that's proposed in this development is a low impact use. I think it won't bring any new or additional traffic to the neighborhood. This development would, in our opinion, be a great benefit for the people who live in this area on Highway 10. And we're excited about the project. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Joe to talk about the engineering aspect, and then Ernie to talk about the traffic impact. Joe?
Thank you, Antoine. I guess I had 3 early meetings with neighbors. I think we've actually developed some friendships. We don't necessarily agree on everything, but we're getting along. So early on, I met with Bill Sutton and John Allison, and we drove around, looked at the project, and they voiced concerns. Concerned about maintenance of the property as it was. and real concern for the neighbors that are just to our east. The backs of their houses, and you can kind of see numbers 47, 8, 9, and there's a 50. So there's really 4 neighbors that front against this. There are more to the south where it says sketch, but really they are less impacted in that there's office buildings that buffer them. And so had several meetings, Bill Sutton, John Allison. Then I met with Bill and Gary Parrott, and just kept going through the various things. It was screening. And Ms. Paulette, if you would go to the second one, please. It's our CO2, please. As we drove around, there's an alley right behind the first house, as I mentioned, and we there was really a nice buffer. But as you looked at it, you realized that the buffer was at the toe of the slope. And that if we had a buffer similar to that at the top of the slope, immediately you wouldn't see the cars, you wouldn't see the new building that's going in, and it would really be a nice screen for them and just eliminate a lot of the impact. And so we agreed to plant, and Mr. Allison had planted, have to go back, cryptomeria, really great looking evergreen trees. And so that's what we've agreed to do. Those trees should be planted about 15 feet on centers, and what we're going to do is actually plant them 7.5 and stagger them. So you're going to get an immediate impact of a screen. And so as you stand, that's not a very good looking person behind the building there, but it's kind of our snowman is looking over the cryptomeria, and you can see that really not only can he not see the cars, he can barely see the building. And so we thought that was important for visual, for sound, for all that, just to separate the two. The other item that came up was initially we were going to put the restaurant on the east side. And we felt like being on the east, it would have better visibility from Highway 10. And it would, because there's a drive that goes right down past the bank. We thought signage on the building would really help people find this user. Initially, a tropical smoothie. We're not committing to just a tropical smoothie. We think it could end up being anything. But what we did commit to is no drive-through and no outdoor seating. And so, thank you for the next slide. And so we took some pictures and we put the images of the trees planted. Now these trees are drawn in at about 6 feet tall. Mr. Allison's trees, after some years, those things are 10 or 15 feet tall and full and look great. And we think ultimately you won't, in that upper picture to the right, you won't even see the houses that you see there today. And so that was back to the screen. But the idea that we were going to have residences up against the restaurant, a commercial use, and not have the office between, that was an issue for me. And I think we all kind of understood what they were saying, because typically you get commercial, office, residential. So we flipped the users, and we've committed to do that. We're going to put the restaurant user on the west end near the NYPD Pizza that's there today, and then the office user will be on the east. And so every home that's in Chauveau Court will have an office buffer before you get to the commercial. One other thing that came up, and I told the neighbors when I met with them, we actually went to a neighborhood meeting. I think we had 40 or 50 people there, and extremely nice, a lot of great questions. There was some question as to whether the driveway in the northeast corner of this site was approved with the initial development, and if it was added later, and it was not. It was actually part of the original POD that was there. So that driveway was built with everything that was built initially, and I just wanted to clear that up for them. I think really that was the main the main issues, and let me make sure. And then the only other issue was really traffic. And I want to step down and let Mr. Peters speak to the traffic. And glad to answer any questions that you might have.
Chairman and Commissioners, I'm Ernie Peters of Peters and Associates Engineers, and it's a pleasure to be here this afternoon to speak to you about this development. We were asked by Joe to take a look at the traffic generation associated with this change, and so that's what we've done. And the change, although the building total square footage is 8,000 square feet, the change only relates to 6,000 of that 8,000. So we based our trip generation comparison on 6,000 square feet. And the calculations that I did was for 6,000 square feet of office use and what traffic that would generate. We calculated that for a 24-hour period and for AM and PM peak hours. Those volumes are fairly low. For that 6,000 square foot office, typical office, quiet office use, it would generate typically on a 24-hour basis 70 vehicle trips. That's counting them going in and coming out. And 11 of those would occur during the AM peak hour, and 10 of them would occur during the PM peak hour. Comparatively, if the 6,000 square feet is developed half as a sit-down restaurant, no drive-through, and the other half as a physical therapy, gym type facility, those two combined uses would generate a total of 480 vehicle trips per day. That's an increase on a daily basis of 410 vehicle trips, counting them in, coming out. And that equates to a volume of 36 vehicle trips during the AM peak hour and 41 vehicle trips during the PM peak hour. The difference, 410 on the 24-hour basis. In the AM peak hour, it's only an increase of 25 vehicle trips during the worst case AM peak hour and 31 additional vehicle trips during the worst case PM peak hour. Those volumes, to put them into perspective, 24 and 31 during the AM and PM peak hours respectively, equate to about or less than a vehicle every 2 minutes during the peak times. So the impact is fairly small for this proposed change. That is held at bay somewhat by the fact that the commercial restaurant use would not have the drive-through facility. Those, as you know, can generate a lot more traffic for a restaurant use. So that's basically what I found. The access is not proposed to change for the entire site. There are two driveways on Cantrell and one on Shenandoah. Those will remain and should adequately serve the completion of this development. If there are any questions, I'll be glad to answer those. Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. You said the increase daily would be about 400
410,
increase
yes,
per day?
per day.
Oh, thank you. That's
Okay.
my goal.
Thank you.
And Chairman, we will reserve the remaining 8 minutes to allow a little bit of a rebuttal after the residents get their opportunity to speak.
Very good, thank you. And as an aside, if you were here for the consent agenda and we've heard your item, you're free to go. You're welcome to stay, but you're free to go if you're on a consent agenda. I apologize for that. Mr. Giles, are you the ringleader of the?
Usual suspect.
Will you be calling your people?
Yes,
or shall we use
thank you, Mr. Chairman, Plain Commissioners. I'm going to do an overview, and I'll have 4 speakers. And I think 4.
You have 5 cards.
Okay, I put one in too, so.
That makes
Okay,
sense.
it would be 5 speakers, and they're just going to do their presentation is going to be based upon their personal
Go for it.
experiences and what they think this is going to do. And my remarks have been changed substantially by what we just heard, because until now we didn't know exactly what the developer was proposing to do. And I, for one, very much appreciate the additional landscaping and the buffering. But so let me just go through this, and some of it may be a little redundant, but I'm Steve Giles, Little Rock attorney, and I'm representing the Chavot Court Neighbor Property Owners Association. And I was contacted by the president, Mr. Bill Sutton, and Gary Parrott back in late spring to take a look at the application that was coming to the plan, and that had been to the Planning Commission and was deferred. So I got involved, and I had several meetings with these gentlemen, and walking the site with them and going down the back of the toe of the landscape, that whatever, and kind of getting from the neighbor's perspective what they're facing. And I just quickly realized that there's a lot of their concerns is kind of a long-standing frustration about what's happening to this area and the growth that's going on with it. And so, and Joe White graciously met with us and explained, to the extent that he knew what the developer wanted to do or would do at that time, spoke with us. And after he left, we had a long neighborhood meeting, and that precipitated the email conversations that the neighbors wrote to you. And I appreciate the response we got from a couple of you thanking the neighborhood. It has become clear to the neighborhood, even after the heard with the proposed, maybe the developer will do this, maybe the developer will do that, that the neighbors just believe that this will have approving this item will have a negative impact on their neighborhood and their quality of life. And that's, of course, exacerbated by the lack of maintenance that the owners or the developers of this office park have just neglected over the years, which, by the way, is a violation of the office park bill of assurance. And our neighbors have complained to them, have done some things to fix the fence themselves, to put in their own shrubbery things, and even a fence around their decks inside the fence, just to have some privacy from, because when this was excavated, it now makes the neighbor's yards 10 to 15 feet below the curb where the parking is. And you'll hear from one of the neighbors a very personal, pretty dramatic experience with having the headlights shining into her window from that side. So anyway, I'm going to be brief. I'm going to and if you read all the email messages, you will understand that these people are very passionate about this. And I think it's the first time I've ever, as a lawyer representing opponents to something, that this is unanimous. All 105 property owners oppose the rezoning. And it is a combination, of course, of the existing conditions and then the onslaught of traffic coming from the 3 new schools that have been developed in the area, and also the Bank of the Ozarks is going to bring how many hundreds of cars, vehicles, or employees and trips a day, maybe twice that. Shenandoah and Highway 10 is not a real comfortable intersection. I might put it in a nice way. When I've driven out there in the afternoon sometimes, not at peak hour, just during the afternoon to meet with my clients, I get a little nervous trying to take a westbound left turn into their Chavot Court. And there's oncoming traffic that I'm told, and I've witnessed myself, that picks up speed eastbound. When it gets through the light at Shenandoah, the speed increases, and left turn signals are very dangerous. And that's one of the reasons why the neighbors mentioned the problems with that drive into the back, that eastern drive, which I've never seen anybody take a left turn on. I tried once and it was dangerous. Okay, that's an existing, that's not caused by this new development. But you'll see those messages that all of this is, it's kind of been creeping on to them. They've lived there, most of them, a long time, and they see this incremental growth of this office park now becoming an office commercial park if this is approved. And that's very disconcerting. They think that will just open the door, if this is approved, for more commercial to happen there. I mean, there's, it's zoning, and a property owner always has the right to come back and request an increase or decrease, a change or whatever. And my people know that, but this was just an example of what is probably going to happen in the future. I think a lot of these people were opposed to the McDonald's on the corner at Shenandoah and Highway 10, and that scared the daylights out of them if that was going to be approved, which it wasn't. I'm going to make a point here because I wrote it down, and I wanted to make this into the record. But the loss of landscaping and the ineffectiveness of the fencing has really exposed those adjacent homeowners to car headlight pollution, traffic and traffic noise. And the proposed hours of operation of the new commercial businesses will exacerbate the problem, creating even more of a negative impact. So a lot of these things now are related to this application and not to just the history of the area. That's the background here that's really causing them a lot of concern. So anyway, this will, and PCD is a planned development, obviously, and in your zoning code, it states one of the primary purposes and intent of an application is to provide for orderly development in order to minimize adverse impact on surrounding areas and on the general flow of traffic. In essence, the Property Owners Association doesn't believe that it will minimize it, may make it even worse. Thank you, ma'am. We're open for questions. And I guess you have the green cards, Paul. You just read them off. I would like for you want to go last? You okay? Okay. Sue. Sue's going to go. Thank you.
Yes, it is. Thank you. Good afternoon. I am Sue Offord, and I'm one of the 40 single women who own homes in the Chevaux Court neighborhood, and I'm happy to be here to talk with you. I want to talk about the safety and privacy issues all of us in our neighborhood are concerned about. The proposed variance will not only negatively impact our neighborhood, it will also cause more problems for the people who travel Highway 10. It's definitely an adventurous and sometimes dangerous tenth of a mile between the light at Shenandoah and the one at Chevaux and the Ranch. Within 2.6 miles, there are 7 schools, 3 of which are high schools with inexperienced drivers. We have not only the morning and evening rush hours, there's the lunch rush, the construction rush, and 10 months a year, the before and after school rush. With a speed limit of 50 miles per hour, frequently exceeded, we have a Daytona 500 going both ways between 7 a.m. and 7 p.m. High traffic is already a problem. Anything will cause it to worsen, and if you look at the completion of the huge bank OZK complex at Shenandoah, it's going to be a nightmare. Turning left into our neighborhood or into the office park is already challenging, as has been mentioned. This zoning change will add additional traffic and increase the danger for all of those who travel Highway 10, including the inexperienced drivers and a lot of senior citizens. Also, our right to privacy is already being infringed. I'm one of the property owners whose land is directly adjacent to the office park. It is south of it, but one of the office buildings is 35 feet from my bedroom. That's not very far. The developer erected a wooden fence, which they do not maintain. It's starting to fall apart. Any maintenance to shore up the fence has been done by homeowners. In in an attempt to protect their property, their privacy, and their security, not by the developer. Anyone in the current office buildings can see over the fence and look into our yards and open garages. The elevation is higher, and anyone standing or driving through the office park property can see directly into the backyards, open garages, and even into the windows of some of the houses. The proposed 8,000 square foot building will have businesses, a fitness center, a restaurant and they will be open for extended hours, no longer 8 to 5, and even more people will have a bird's eye view of our yards and our property. When the POA asked the developer to build a privacy wall by the parking area, that was declined. No one wants people gawking at you every time you open your garage or you walk into your yard. No one wants to listen to car doors slamming and people talking at 5:30 a.m. or 10:30 p.m. And you definitely do not want to live right behind a dumpster with the smell and the attracted vermin to that area. When we bought our homes in Chavot Court, we were told that the Highway 10 overlay plan assured that the businesses adjoining our property would be zoned for small office. Allowing the zoning variance violates what is a covenant among the homeowners of Chavot, the office park developers, and the city of Little Rock. A variance will negatively impact not only the property values of our neighborhood, but also the privacy and safety of the residents in our neighborhood. And it will worsen the traffic hazard for the large number of people who travel Highway 10 daily. Progress means going forward for the greater good. This variance does not benefit anyone except the developer. We ask that you deny this variance, and I thank you for your time.
Mr. Chairman, is this clock, this is the timer for our time? Okay, that's what we have left.
Yes.
Because probably I would suggest we better hurry up.
Do you have a preference of your speakers, or the next card's Gary
Gary Parrott?
Gary Parrott?
He'll be up at the meeting. Yeah. Sure. Okay. Let's have Gary Parrott. Yeah, Gary.
What's your pleasure?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If you would, I think I'm going to make this very, very short and brief. I know y'all enjoy hearing you for hours. You can pass that out amongst your people to look at. What we have there, I'm going to get right to the point so that we can have some time for the others. If you look over to the third page, this will give you a very good example of the maintenance that goes on there. You're detecting a lack of trust amongst the residents that live there. Well, here's why. Because there's not been any reactions. These are great people. We thoroughly like Joe. We like all the folks we met. But they simply haven't been taking care of the property, nor have they responded to us. If you'll turn to the next page, they were talking about the parking cars overlooking the homes, and you're going to hear from another lady talk about that. If you'll look there at the level, here's an eyeball level of a car parked on that shot that you saw in the sketch earlier. That car is parked literally with its headlights in the back windows of the homes. Yes, they put in a 5-foot fence, but they also then raised their building area where they went in and built it up. Now you can park a car there and shoot right into the house. And it is at the right footage, but I think the back footage is only 15 feet. We're also a little bit disturbed over the overlay is basically ignored now. And people just go ahead and do whatever they want to do. Here's another shot of the biz and the parking with the small fence in the back. That's the area it's going to be done. There's the area looking at it. You can see the homes of Chavot. If I could get your attention to look at one other thing. These are the problems with the relationship with this particular developer. Good folks, I know. They want to put in a restaurant. What are we going to do to the hours? The hours, if you open at 6, you're going to have to come in at 5. There are going to be grease traps. There are going to be other things. We all bought and came in there based on small office, 8 to 5, 7 to 7. Not 10 to 11. Well, the employees have to stay for another hour. They have to clean up. They have to pull everything out and put it back. That's not what we came into this with. We've had an agreement now for these years and then suddenly it wants to change. That's our problem. Now, that's representing the POA and what we've seen here. Here's what bothers me about this entire thing. If you'll look at the first 2 pages, that's a shot of that intersection. If you look at the development entry where all this new traffic and everything's going to go, that arrow coming down, that's their entry. Look at the Chavot entry, how far away it is in that red light. Look at the second page. 2 schools, westbound entry at Chavot, coming into our red light. 2 schools, the new Pinnacle schools. Guess where kids are going to go at 3 o'clock? Turning against the traffic to go westbound. They have 70, 75 feet to make a decision to turn in then. You can't even get through. To give you an idea of that intersection, you've got George Gleason. We think he's going to be a great neighbor. We love how he really wants a first-class operation out there. We're all for him. We know he's going to keep these things that way. But we don't want to see this commercial application come into this lot, literally sitting in the laps of our people. And if you'll look at this, awesome. Here's the reality. Here's the video. Now, we just saw a traffic count. Let's look at the reality. Here's 2 o'clock in the afternoon on a Monday afternoon. This is what the cars look like standing, looking at that entry. Here's a car trying to get out of the bank parking lot. This is the way it is now at some of the slowest periods you can. And this is 2 o'clock in the afternoon. It was the week of the last meeting that was delayed. I did that on Monday right before the meeting. School is out right now. Guy gets out. You see those cars oncoming? All those cars will be turning the cars at that light will be turning from that school. You can hear the horn honking up there. Folks, this is not something we need in that neighborhood. And we are asking you, as our commissioners, our people looking at this, to vote with us on this and not bring this in. We've survived to now. To make a few more bucks on a hamburger, we just don't need it. So thank you for your time.
Sandra Cobb, Bill,
How much do we have here?
329.
Okay, I'll truncate my,
And I got 3 cards, so.
okay. I'm Bill Sutton, president of the Chavot Court POA. I'm here primarily to exercise my legal responsibility to vote against by all of the people who live in 105 houses were unanimously voting against this zoning change. Now, I've got a theory that the city of Little Rock always protects their citizens whenever there's something that comes that's so negative to them. Today, I never personally have exercised that or tried it out. I'm trying it out today. We'll see how we do. You all may teach me a lesson. Thank you very much.
Sandra Cobb,
What do you have here? Do I have a minute or two?
got 2 minutes. 2.5 minutes.
Sandy Cobb, I'm going to be really fast. I live the first house into Chavot, a fishbowl from that parking lot. Most of the cars will park facing my house. They sit there sometimes with their lights on. The voices from the ATM comes down that hill. And I'm a single woman living alone, and people looking into my house, in my garage, in my yard, and more people looking into my house and my yard. You know, it makes me feel scared and unsafe. And also, as far as the maintenance goes, I went over to the bank at least 6 times, practically begging them to turn the water on the plants so that they wouldn't die. And they said, we'll send it to corporate, and nothing happened. So I have no confidence at all in what we're looking at. And I purchased my lot 6.5 years ago from White Dater, and I was told that the fence was maintained by the POA and that it was zoned for offices only. And I found out that the zoning can be changed, and the fence was not maintained by the POA. That side's maintained by the bank, which is not maintained. And I'm done. Thank you.
Cindy Boyle?
Yes. That was my mother. I didn't know I was going to speak, but yes, well, Mom was worried she would get too upset to speak, so I thought I would give her some moral support. But yeah, 6.5 years ago, when she moved to Little Rock, she was widowed, and I went with her to do everything, which I still kind of do that because she's by herself. But she bought the lot from White Dater, Mr. White. And as she's already stated, there was we had a lot of questions about the lot. It was the last one in there. It has a big culvert running through it. It backs up to the bank. And so we asked a ton of questions about the maintenance on the fence. Was it our responsibility or their responsibility? And about plants and barriers and whatnot. And she got to the heart of it. We just don't have any confidence that it will be taken care of because it hasn't been taken care of. It just looks worse than it did. Mom was throwing the hose over the fence trying to water plants, to keep plants growing because she couldn't get the bank to water the plants. So I think it's twofold. The issues they've already stated. With the new development, you're going to have more traffic, more rodents, so more people, more security risk. The second is not maintaining, and so even if this goes forward or if it doesn't, they should fix the fence, maintain the fence, put a barrier in, and trees may not be enough. We think they need to do a brick fence on top of that in addition to the barriers of the trees. Done.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I will commend you, your group. I don't believe I've ever seen so many emails. And they're actually helpful. So there was quite a volume. I commend you for that. They were helpful. I commend you for that. So thank you. Joe, would you like to finish?
Well, I'm going to cover two quick things, and I'm going to let Mr. Phillips finish.
Okay.
One thing I forgot earlier, and when I went to the POA meeting, Mrs. Cobb was there and explained her situation. You know, our application is really only for Lot 2R, which is, you know, just the middle lot there where the building's going. And we were putting the trees in there. She asked at the meeting if we would extend that planting up behind her house. I couldn't commit to her at the time because I wasn't the developer, not spending the money, but the developer went along without question, said, yes, we're going to extend those trees north and screen Mrs. Cobb's house. We thought it was a very reasonable request. And if you stand out there, you can look at it, you go, yeah, this screening should extend north. The only other thing really to cover for me is we were not the developer of Chavot. Mr. Pfeiffer was. We did the engineering. That we did, but we weren't selling lots. Just wanted to clear that up. That probably didn't sound very good on TV. So anyway, glad to answer any questions.
Thanks, Joe. Chairman and commissioners, I want to address some of the issues raised by the neighbors in Chavot Court. First of all, I want to commend them being civically minded for coming here and expressing their position and working with us to try to make this the best project as possible. And that's what I think we have done, made this the best project as possible. And I appreciate Mr. Peters giving the traffic count. I know Commissioner Thomas asked about those numbers. When you break them down, even at the peak hour, we're talking about one additional car every couple minutes. Non-peak hour, you're talking even less than that. So I think the traffic impact is minimal, as Mr. Peters mentioned. If there is a traffic impact, I think everyone knows that it's related to the OZK development that's going down the street. And I think that's really the elephant in the room and not this project. One of the, I don't know if it's Mr. Giles, one of the neighbors, mentioned privacy issues. And I think, as Mr. White pointed out on his diagram, the trees will provide that privacy. So the concern about headlights or being able to look in or look out of someone's house will be resolved with the planting of the trees. So I want to make sure the commission is aware of that. Secondly, I think in law school, we learn a lot about the parade of horribles. If this happened, then this could happen. And if that happened, then this could happen. And as a lawyer, I respect that. But sometimes there are issues that prevent the parade of horribles from happening. In this case, it's the physical layout of this office park. It's not conducive for a McDonald's or Chick-fil-A or Cheesecake Factory or anything like that from happening. So I think some of the concerns that are being addressed by the neighbors about what could happen, will there be a drive-through, will there be increased traffic count, I don't think that's an issue here just because of the physical structure of the existing development. Checking my notes here, excuse me. Last thing, I want to point out two things. I want to thank Mr. Carney for giving the explanation on the front end. I think it's important to remember that staff has looked at this proposal and has approved the proposal as is. I think that's important for the commissioners and for the neighbors to know. And secondly, for the commissioners to know, if this was a office, traditional office use, 03, as Mr. Carney mentioned, there would be ancillary uses for a commercial, such as the restaurant in this case. Obviously, Mr. Carney explained the history, and we're not there anymore. But in the event this was a traditional office use, even the rules as they currently stand would allow for ancillary use. So this is not much different than what's already contemplated in the Little Rock Code. And with that, I'll take my seat unless any of the commissioners have questions for me or Mr. White or Mr. Peters.
Do any more of your team want to speak?
Anyone else want to speak? No. And I'll just mention, I think this is ultimately a low impact development that will ultimately be for the benefit of those who live in this area. I don't see this as being a type of impact where people are going to drive from East Little Rock out to Highway 10 to access this development. This would be for the neighbors. And if nothing else, I'll take my seat. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Commissioners, questions?
This is probably for staff. The last point is one that I think is important. Could you just explain to me one more time how the ancillary use would sort of affect this if it were a different development?
Well, in the typical 03 zoning district development, you can build an office building. And as a matter of right, within that office building, up to 10% of the floor area can be used by this list of ancillary uses. It could be a barber shop, it could be a dry cleaners, it could be a restaurant. There's a list of uses that are permitted as a matter of right. When the first POD was approved for this site, it was a single building, some 30-odd thousand square foot single building. The uses that were approved were 03 uses plus the 10% ancillary. So they had a right to do 30-some-odd thousand square foot building, and they could have done a 3,000 square foot restaurant within there under that plan. What we have now is not one big building, but we have a group of smaller buildings where staff was coming from is looking at it as a unified development, some 30,000 plus square foot unified development, and in our mind, allowing up to 10% of that floor area within that development to be the ancillary use made sense.
Is there any formulation of this that could go forward as of right, if they were to jettison the restaurant piece, or would they still need to come?
Well, as it stands right now, the approved plan development is for the multiple lots, and the only permitted uses are general and professional office uses. So the reason they're here before you, or the 03 uses, the reason they're before you is to allow the restaurant use. If they at some point down the road wanted to make an additional change or to add uses beyond what the current plan allows or what might come out of this action, they'd have to come back to you and go through the whole process again.
Thank you.
Yes.
Whose responsibility is it to maintain the fence between the brick posts? Is it the developer or is it the neighborhood?
Now, I'm assuming the fence was the responsibility of the developer. I don't know which came first, if the fence was built in conjunction with Chavot or if the fence was built with the office. My gut feeling it was probably built with the office development. We can look into that. If the fence was a component of the approved development plan, it is their responsibility to maintain it. This is news to us that that hadn't occurred, that the landscaping hadn't been maintained, that the fencing has not been maintained. If it is the responsibility of the developer, I hope they will step up and take ownership of that. If not, I have staff that can encourage them to do that.
Great, thank you.
Mr. Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, I'm just going to respond to the issue as it relates to the maintenance of the fence. Currently, as I understand the layout, the existing tenants should have maintained the fence, and I think that's the concern of the neighbors. On behalf of our client, we would only be responsible for a certain portion of the fence in conjunction with our portion of the lot, but we have accepted a responsibility to maintain the fence going forward to benefit the neighbors and be respectful of their concerns. Just wanted to make sure that the commission was aware of that.
Ms. Giles, maybe show of hands. I guess I'm a little conflicted, confused. Are y'all here protesting the restaurant portion of this? Or are you here protesting or objecting to the entire 8,000 square foot building?
I think it's the entire 8,000 square foot building because it's.
So if there were no restaurant in it, everybody'd be happy.
I don't know, I'm not a resident. So.
Well, okay, I understand, okay.
Yeah, it's the rezoning to commercial.
If there's no commercial in the 8,000, are we happy?
Yeah.
If it stays office, is there a way that
Okay, thank you. Okay.
Chairman, please, all these proceedings, if you're at the mic, is recorded and we can hear them when we play them back. If anybody wants to speak, or the commissioners or the chairman wants to hear them speak, please bring them up to the podium.
I've got a question of staff. I do want to preface this question, though, and I do say with a lot of love, these kind of applications are a lightning rod for a lot of understandable grievance by neighborhoods who see a lot of changes around them. And obviously, the grief over the urbanization of that corridor and maybe some allegedly derelict practices by the previous developer. But I always thought we needed a reconciliation counselor to deal with that because we really have to deal with the application. It's distinguished from the heartfelt feelings you have, which I can't discount that. But the question I have for staff is, someone referred to the Bank of OZK as being a great asset there, and that's fine. It's going to be also a creator of more commercial demand, all those office workers. There is precedent now. We already have some commercial zoning in different plots along that corridor. When is the last time the land use plan's been updated? In light of the new OZK, which is like the Mall of America in its size and scale. Any thoughts?
As far as the entire corridor along Highway 10, we have researched it and looked at the plan through the area because a question was asked at the board level to staff to look at that and see if the design overlay district was still a viable design overlay district. And we based upon a percentage of land and how much of the area within that corridor has been developed and how much is left to be developed. And now you're asking me something that I don't have the exact numbers with me, for this, but we also had to take into consideration not only the areas that is within the city limits, but also the areas, because it does extend a little bit outside into the extraterritorial jurisdiction. Currently, we believe that the Highway 10 Design Overlay District is still a viable design overlay district. And that right now the only really recommendation that they had to present was the change the size of the variance for a planned development, in that corridor, because there's been some planned developments come through that was below that acreage limit, to come forth, And we believe that that should be the only really major change to that. The rest of it still stands within the zone, and you can actually see through there areas that when they get developed, they actually have that setback. It was that setback and that corridor look that really what that design overlay district was going for, to kind of keep it, you know, separate from what development had occurred down Rodney Parham and other major corridors.
Okay.
And so, is there a major change proposed? No, you know, for the corridor.
So, yeah, it seems like Mr. Phillips' partner one time said it's probably not viable, the uses prescribed for the land use so much as the physical setbacks and the design configuration still is viable. And I think the question is going to come up to the board. This is going to be advanced to the board, and I think the question is going to come up again, how viable are these aspects of the Highway 10? Because the Bank OCK has changed the nature of that corridor. But
And it will change it, but please keep in mind that, you know, development will happen, and Highway 10 is, for the most part, the control of the traffic and the improvements along Highway 10 as far as the widening is concerned is the Arkansas Department of Transportation responsibility. And so, you know, they do have plans for that widening, and I haven't seen the latest ones. And I don't know if Mr. Hood has seen the latest ones at the deal,
okay.
but they do have plans to widen it and improve it. And there's always a give and take in that, you know, which comes first, the development or the roadway. And, you know, I'm sure that any improvement the DOT will have will alleviate some of the traffic concerns on Highway 10, but it probably will not alleviate all of them over time.
thanks.
Commissioner Thomas?
My concern is the traffic there. We all travel down Highway 10. We already know how difficult it is to maneuver down Highway 10, and the development there with the video that I saw, and I'm down Highway 10 quite a bit, trying to navigate and turn into that development, I think would highly increase not only just the safety of drivers down there. That video, if I'm not mistaken, was taken not even during the time school is open. So that and trying to get into the proposed tropical smoothie or the larger development there. And if the elevation this development is built on a higher elevation, your diagram even showed, it would be more of an intrusion to the homeowners there, in my opinion, and looking at your own graphs. So, and with those facts, I can't support it. So I'd be voting against it.
I would note, just for everybody in the room, if we vote to approve this, it will go to the city board for their consideration. If we vote to deny it, the opponents have a right to go to the city board. So bottom line is, either way, it's probably going to go to the city board. But with that notwithstanding, any other question? Hearing none, a motion would be in order.
Mr. Chairman, I move for approval of item C, including all staff comments and conditions.
Is there a second? And it's seconded. All those in favor of the action, please raise your right hand. And those opposed? And was it 6-3? 5-3, the motion is approved. Is there any other business to come before us?
Motion has failed, Chairman.
I
You have to have
needed
6
6. My
affirmative.
apologies.
That's right.
I'm sorry the motion failed. I'm not sorry the motion, but I apologize for the error because it needed 6 to pass. Forgive me.
Mr. Chairman, if I may.
Please.
The action of the commission was to vote to deny the application since it did not receive 6 votes. The applicant does have the right to ask that the item go forward to the board of directors as an appeal of your action. Any registered objectors will be notified of that action as well. as any property owners within 200 feet. There'd be the typical notice as for the Planning Commission, it'd be the same notice to go to the Board of Directors if the applicants do choose to appeal this action to the City Board.
Thank you. Anything else come before the commission? We will have an informal meeting in August. I think it's the 15th is the date, to guess, but the middle of August, there will be an informal meeting. Hearing none, thank you for coming. We are adjourned.